Hi everyone, and welcome to Terry Lawson Photography Conversations. It's February 15th, 2014, and we're in Parksville, British Columbia. Today, we are going to go out on a very small limb and talk to a structural engineer about the creative side of engineering. I'm going to be talking to Tony Horlor, a professional engineer who has been practicing the art of engineering for over 35 years. Now I know you're all wondering, why in the world would I want to talk to an engineer when they are perceived as living in a world where only logic, critical thinking, and numbers exist? Well, it's because I think it's an engineer's creative thinking in conjunction with their technical ability that help them find solutions for the creation of new buildings, bridges, and even processes that help the earth. So sit back and enjoy my conversation with Tony as we explore the possibility that engineers may have a creative side. So welcome to Conversations, Tony.
Thank you, Terry. Looking forward to it.
I have to say that, just to let everybody know where we're sitting right now, we're in your guitar room. And I'm sitting surrounded by, how many guitars?
50, give or take.
50 guitars are in this little tiny room, and it's quite amazing. Plus some fantastic photographs and posters on the walls. It's a very comfortable space, and it must have taken you a bit of time to put all this together.
It's kind of a lifetime of collecting, and as different a space as you could be in on the weekend than you would be on the weekday.
So, as I've told everybody in the introduction to our conversation today, we want to talk about something that has sort of been on my mind for a while, and that is the thought that, contrary to what a lot of people think, there's actually a creative side to engineering. So, to start this all off, I was thinking maybe you could talk about how and why you became an engineer.
All right. Well, I think part of it was very deliberate, and part of it was really either good fortune or it was accidental. I don't know which to attribute it to, but I think as a really young person, as a co-worker, in fact, of ours, Terry, once pointed out, some kids got mechano sets for Christmas and some kids got other toys for Christmas. And believe it or not, I was one of those kids of the 50s who had a mechano set.
Yeah.
And I think there was a fascination with how things went together that comes out of owning a mechano set. I was never the handy sort of child. My dad wasn't a craftsman or anybody who had a workshop or anything of the sort, but I think on the larger scale I like to know how things went together. And it was pretty latent until I think I lived in Edmonton in the 60s when the skyline went from having absolutely nothing more than maybe a 10-story hotel to having high-rise buildings start. And I lived on the opposite side of the river from where these buildings had started going up. So I would go down there, and there were two buildings in particular in Edmonton, one which is really iconic still, and it's the CN Tower in Edmonton, which was probably about a 30-story building. And it was going up in steelwork, and I went down every day on my bike to the riverbank, and I would take pictures of the progress on those buildings going up. And it was amazing how they stood out from the rest of the skyline. Again, just as flat as a 50s, 60s prairie town could be to the beginnings of what is now a very strong downtown. And the fascination with those buildings, again, sat there very latently. But I think before I went to university, I really didn't know that I wanted to be an engineer.
Yeah.
I knew I liked math, I knew I liked science, but it could have gone either way at that point. I could have gone into education, I could have gone into engineering, and it's almost like I felt I had been swept along, but subliminally it was this how things go together in buildings that always captured me.
Yeah. And I think I sort of had a similar sort of experience too. I mean, I was always one that was curious, and it's something that sort of stayed in your subconscious, right? And it's what eventually led you where you really wanted to go.
Exactly. I always admired the kids who said, I'm going to be a fireman when I grow up. And I don't know, maybe they did become a fireman, but I'm not entirely certain I knew what I was going to be when I grew up. But it certainly had to be something that worked your brain and had a creative aspect to it.
Right. So now, in our day-to-day lives, there is this left brain logic side, and there's the right brain creative thing that's going on in all of us. And engineers typically are the left brain people, or that's the perception of what engineers are. But like I was saying at the beginning, I think there's this right brain aspect involved in actual engineering that is important for a client in projects that you're working on. I'm just wondering what you think about that.
Well, I think there's a stereotype of engineers, and I don't know that it's even unfair, but an engineer to a lot of people is not particularly a great communicator. He's probably wearing a long sleeve shirt buttoned up to the neck, probably the pocket protector, and is really only comfortable talking in technical terms. And that's certainly one kind of engineer that's useful. But in our business, which has been structural engineering of buildings, you and myself, that creative side is vital. Because it's not just a bunch of numbers that we're playing with every day. It's something that's going to become a real tangible item that'll be built, and it'll be there for a long time. And I think buildings are the root of kind of creativity, and great buildings, people love them, they remember them. And I think what people have to know is that a lot of engineering is part of the character of that building that makes it something that you like. Even if you can't see it, it is, but oftentimes it's there in view as well.
Right. Well, I think an architect is really an artist, right? He does art in 3D.
He is.
And they have a vision of what this project is going to be in their brain. And it needs that complement of engineers, consulting engineers, to work alongside him to realize that vision, right?
Agreed. And that vision and the shape and form of the building, and even the way that it's laid out, the way it flows and it functions, we have to give the credit to our architectural friends who have come up with that concept. But I always like to say, we're the guys that make your dreams come true.
Right.
and without those engineers, these buildings would not be happening. And often, if the architect is of that type to do so, there are structural engineering elements that are part of the building that are just really part of the beauty. And it's make or break that you are a kind of a creative person who makes that not only efficient and cost effective and strong enough to hold up its loads, but it can be viewed by somebody walking into the building and say, wow, isn't that beautiful? Right. And you didn't ruin it with the engineering, you enhanced it.
Right. Yeah, and I think there are skills that an engineer has that have to complement that, right? And I think you just sort of alluded to that fact that you have to come up with these creative solutions that, in an exposed situation, contribute to his vision, right?
That's right. And I think that as you work in that industry for a while, the creative people, and it's always the people in engineering that I'm attracted to or I want to work with, are the people who don't just sit there passively and they're told what they need to do in order to get the end result, but they contribute. So they would say back to an architect, how about if we put a big diagonal brace across here in the ceiling space? how about if we did, a canopy that doesn't look like anything's holding it up? And these are not your everyday sort of structures. They're meant to be something special, and that's the joy of the job for us, is to get to work on things like that. And you do get to stand back at the end and say, I worked on this. My blood's in this building, and I didn't just leave a pile of paper behind today after my 7.5 hours of work. I have something tangible out there, standing there, that is evidence of my work and my career. And nothing against the people who do leave the paper there, but the tangible part of leaving something behind is what makes my job satisfying.
Right. No, I love that, because if you think of creativity in its purest form, whether it's a song that someone has come up with, a painting, words, they're all ideas that didn't exist before, right? They're something that's come from someone's experience, someone's knowledge, and they've been put into a physical form. And because it just happens to be a column or a beam or an arch or something that an engineer has done, shouldn't preclude that from being art, right?
That's true. Like the left side of the brain that you allude to for me is that I'm excited about solving a problem for somebody. That's almost like solving a mystery for me. How do I get this to work? And then the right side of the brain is, how do I get it to work? And actually it's something really nice, really kind of significant, that it's an achievement rather than just getting through the problem.
Right.
And it's amazing in a lot of ways, again, the people that you're attracted to who are a little bit of both, the left and the right side of the brain. How many people that you've worked with that are so good at this job, but you find out that they are photographers, they're musicians, they're artists, they sing in a choir or whatever, and it's like, really? An engineer? I remember playing in a band once, and an architect that was one of my clients walked in, saw me playing good old classic rock and roll, and he said, Tony, is that you? And he couldn't believe that an engineer could be in a band.
And that's something I'd like to sort of continue talking about, and that is, as we talked about at the beginning, we're surrounded by all of your guitars. Do you have this healthy art lifestyle that you enjoy?
Well, I think I do. I think that, that I do kind of walk both sides of the fence. I think my wife said she wouldn't even marry me if I wouldn't have had something on both sides of the fence, because, that stereotypical engineer just wouldn't have worked for her. But, I've certainly, I'm an art collector, so I have quite an appreciation of art. I wouldn't even claim to begin to know or scratch the surface of art history, but I know that I love it, and I can't stay out of galleries. I've played music since I was 12. I've collected guitars. I've gone through quite fertile sessions of songwriting, which I myself didn't think I had in me, but some of it is just really awful, and some of it is actually very kind of self-fulfilling. I think that I did a good job of some of it, and it makes me feel good that I'm a balanced kind of person, to the degree that, I often say I feel like a jack of all trades sometimes, as my dad said, a master of none. But, and sometimes I think I'd rather be a jack of all trades, and you can sample a little bit of lots of aspects of what life has to offer, not just a specialist in one.
Yeah. Do you think that artistic side that you have sort of contributes to your day-to-day engineering talent?
I do. I don't know that I could quantify it for you, but I think that if you could create music, for example, then it kind of indicates that you have that inherent creativity, that you'll apply that somewhere else as well. And, I think I have, at various times in my career, you get a more significant project, and the structure really is an important component of it. And I would use the words damn proud of some of the stuff that I've done. Other things are the mundane. We all have that in our lives. But when you get a special project with something where your work majorly contributed to the architecture of that building and the experience as a public space, that's a great feeling, and you couldn't have achieved that without having an element of creativity. You couldn't be the pocket protector, straight line kind of person and come up with solutions like that.
Do you find in your workings with an architect, the artist, the visionary, the opportunity to work with them and have them accept those creative ideas, or do you find them very restrictive in allowing you the opportunity to say, how would this look here, or how would this look there?
Well, I like the ones who say, I want you to contribute something here. I want you to express ideas that are to the benefit of the project. I really don't like being held in a tight confine when I'm working on a job, but I think the better ones always push their fellow consultants to the edges a little bit to achieve things that they might not have if they were just doing it in a very kind of normal fashion. We used to say that if you were going to be a consulting engineer, and especially a structural engineer, that you're going to be working with architects for your whole career. So we always said the best course they could have given us in fourth year was the care and feeding of architects, because you have to. It's a fine line. You may come up with a brilliant idea in your mind, and they'll say, "No, I don't think so."
Yeah.
And at that point you have to say, all right, well, this guy is the architect, and as far as I've come in his direction to his right brain thinking, he's still the specialist in that regard. Yeah. And if I have to go back to the drawing board and come up with another idea for him, that's not really a slap in the face. That's just another opportunity to try another idea out on him.
Yeah.
And I think the strength of the two working together is that you come up with something that works for both of you.
Right.
And it's probably a best possible solution if you do it that way.
Yeah. So over 35 years plus, are there some projects that stick out in your mind that allowed you to sort of step out on that limb and come up with these very interesting engineering solutions that complemented the architecture?
There's quite a number, but every so often in a career you get the opportunity to work on a very special job. And I remember some of the ones that I really enjoyed being such as the Citadel Theatre in Edmonton, which was a very great to work on an artistic project that's going to be used for the arts.
And it's still a classic building in Edmonton.
In many years later.
Yeah.
When I moved to Victoria in 1986, I was actually hired to work on the Victoria Conference Centre. And it's probably still the kind of landmark modern building in Victoria, which is full of classic, of course, Victorian era and historic buildings. But the structure in that building, I think, probably pushed me further than any other one that I've worked on, probably way outside of my comfort zone. And the final product is always complimented by people who come to Victoria. It's always admired, and there's no better feeling than to have contributed to something like that. And certainly there's a brand new building even in the downtown Victoria called the Atrium, which has won many awards. And
you took me through that one.
That's right, yeah. And
I saw the pride in your eyes.
What started out as just a square planned office tower on a huge piece of land had an amoeba-shaped 7-story high atrium dropped in the middle of it. So not even just a nice rectangle with glass over the top, but a totally irregular kind of blob shape, for lack of a better term, atrium that is curving and exposes all the floors to the inside of the building. And once again, the proof in the pudding is the way the public perceives the building. And when you read in the newspaper constantly that this is quality public space, that people love the building, there's no better reward for what you've done than to read that, because that's they're the judges of your work. You may think it's great, but it's when everybody thinks it's great that you can really sit back and say, I'm happy with that one.
Yeah, and I think the ultimate satisfaction, all of that, it may go a bit away from what we're talking about, but isn't it a wonderful feeling to have a legacy of that left behind?
It is, and as I said earlier, it sure beats having a pile of paper. For us as engineers, that legacy is, to me, is equivalent to an author and the books that he leaves behind, or a painter and the paintings he leaves behind. I don't know what I'd do if my job didn't result in something that I left behind. It almost sounds a little vain, but not really. It's just based on satisfaction and knowing that you contributed rather than just trudged through a lot of processes until retirement. And it's a very fulfilling job.
Yeah, I think some of the most satisfying experiences I had actually involved my children. Driving in the car with them in the back seat, and we're going somewhere, and they may have a friend with them. We're going down to the Citadel to go to the children's festival or whatever, and you're driving down the street, and they're all in the back seat, and one of your kids would say to their friend, "See that building right there? My dad did that building."
Yeah, it's a pretty nice feeling,
and a smile comes on your face.
Yeah, it is pretty special, and that's probably the reason that we have been able to stay this long in this career, is because of some of the satisfaction it feeds back at you. Because I think otherwise, you would probably burn out a long time ago, or would have. But I think that satisfaction is what keeps you going.
Well, isn't it like everybody always says, you have to be happy with your work rate. It makes you want to go to work in the morning. Otherwise, it would be no fun at all. So I think that creative side of engineering is one of the things for me personally that made me want to get to work every day, because you didn't know what was going to happen that day, right?
That's right, and there's an old saying too that every building is different, and it is. We never, or almost never, repeat a building. Yeah. Sometimes it might be required because they need 2 or 3 schools in a very big hurry in a subdivision, and somebody has said it would be smart to take a good design and use it 3 times. But that's very much the exception, and virtually every building is unique, and that's really what keeps you sane in the business. Is that tomorrow isn't going to be the same as yesterday.
Yeah.
And not too many jobs can offer that.
Yeah, and I love being in those first few meetings with the architect, and the plans are rolled out on the conference table, and you look at the drawings, and sometimes you may say it out loud, but most of the time you say it in your head, and you say, "You want to do what?" And that becomes a challenge, right? And I just say, that's okay. We can do this. We'll figure out a way to do it.
It's very important that you can offer that to everybody, and I think they value just as much your practical side that says, I don't think I would do this. I think that we might be able to pull it off, but at great expense, great impracticality, and unless it offers, the ultimate architectural expression to this building. One of the reasons we're here is to bring a certain amount of grounding, because that's our, again, our left side coming in and saying, this isn't the right thing to do.
Exactly. There's a certain amount of logic that has to still be involved.
Correct.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you know what? I think that you've helped me confirm in my mind what I thought, and that is that there certainly is this creative side to engineering, and I want to thank you for letting me come into your home and this beautiful space and talking to me about it. It's been great.
My pleasure. It's never hard work to draw this kind of stuff out of me, because it's been my life, and I think it sort of splits off into a lot of other aspects of your life as well. So I'm glad you brought up the topic.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks you, Terry.
You have been listening to Terry Lawson Photography Conversations, interviews with photographers and those involved in the arts. I hope you can join me for my next conversation with Tony Brenner, an architect from Edmonton, Alberta.